Hello, and welcome to another Tuesday night show and share. And I want to start us all off with a happy belated birthday to Dodie. Congratulations, happy birthday, Dodie! Yay! Now that you're embarrassed, we can see your red face. We'll go on. I love Tuesday night show and shares because people show their projects either in progress, whether they finished or not, whether they failed or not. And it's just a good way to see what's going on in some of the other zones that you may not be familiar with. So I'm going to start it off with Jake and a 3D printed leather cosplay.
Good evening, guys. Hope everyone's doing good. Let's make sure I'm working here. All right, we're all set up. So, 3D printed TPU cosplay, or how I avoided leather working last year. So, last year I was invited to my first Comic-Con Fanboy Expo, and I decided to be Han Solo. So, let's see. I printed this blaster. This was an available model from Thingiverse. I did most of the body here in PETG filament. It's pretty tough. And the handle here I did with 30% wood filler. So that gave it like a nice sandable texture. But once I had that done, I was like, all right, what am I going to carry it in? Am I just going to walk around with this in my hand? So I looked online. This was within about 2 weeks of the con, so I was pretty limited on time and resources. There were some pretty cool holsters online, like on Etsy, but they were pricey, or it would have taken weeks to even get them in. So what to do? Well, I already had a 3D printer, so I looked to the internet and I found some stuff. These are models for belt buckles. Not quite centered. There we go. So these are models for belt buckles, like you can see right here. But what am I going to attach them with? So I had seen a blog post online where someone had mentioned that you could print belts and things like that by printing a coiled shape. You know, so I thought I might give that a whirl. So I jumped into Blender, which is an open source 3D modeling program I'm sure some of you are familiar with, and I used a function called an Archimedes curve to generate this spiral here. And you can tweak the length of that, and there are some logarithmic ways to determine the exact length of that, but again, I was crunched for time, so I just kind of printed it to see how long it would be. So yeah, you start with your curve here. I won't get into the full details. Then you create the shape that you want to align with that curve. In this case, it was just like the cross section of a belt. And then you map it to your curve, and you'll end up with something like that. So to test the length of it, I printed just one layer and peeled it off, held it around my waist, and from there calculated about how long I would actually need it to be. And once I had that going, there is the full design, and it is pretty interesting to take that and just peel it off of the bed. The bed itself is only 10 inches by 10 inches, and I was able to print a 38-inch belt, so I kind of felt like I bent space and time a little there when I pulled that off. And yeah, so now the belt was done, I needed the holster, the actual part for the gun to go into. This was definitely out of my scope of skill at the time, and again, time is dwindling down. The con was, I believe, in like 7 days. So I pulled the model for the blaster into Blender, just roughly assembled it. You can kind of see the barrel here isn't aligned, but for these purposes it worked. I mapped a box around the digital model and then extended a piece up, and I was faced with this quandary of how do I make a round cylinder map nicely to the edges of a square. I couldn't tell you how I did it. Somehow pulled it off. I lost the project file. I wanted to show that off. But yeah, so I pulled that off and imported it into Cura, printed it standing vertically, and it came out extremely well. I had a small support column there that just tore right off, and you can see where my gun was at this stage. So, this was all coming together pretty quickly. And then, yeah, so to get all the joining bits, I printed a full sheet of TPU and just decided to go old school, clip edit like it was leather. And then the belts here that I printed, you can see me ironing them with a literal anvil on my 3D printer bed, heated up to 40 degrees Celsius. Works fine. And then, yeah, to join it, I used a soldering iron, just stabbed holes in it. It actually came together pretty well and held up extremely well. I tried to pull on it at one point when I got it wrong, and it stayed together pretty good. And let's see here. You know, had some fun with that. Found a random Star Wars backdrop, and was just like, all right, photo time. First time wearing a wig too. There's a lot of firsts this weekend. It was a really good time. Are there any questions about the process?
How did you grow that
$20
hair?
Etsy. Yeah, that's great. And it comes really well too. I could have if I had a little more time.
For the leather, how much actual leather was it this leather like?
So it's a thermoelastic polyurethane, or TPU, and I think for the total build I used, well, you know, I could just hold it because I did bring it tonight. Let's see here. So I would say probably around 200 grams. It wasn't very much at all. And you know, a roll of that is 1 kilogram, and I think I got it for about $20. So maybe about $5 in material there. And if you guys want to pass this around and have a look, start over here. Don't worry if any parts snap off. They've already done it. I'll print more if necessary. Any other questions? All right, thank you guys.
That was great, Jake. Too bad you weren't around for the lightsaber hilt contest. That would have been great to have you judging, right? Well,
Next time.
all right. Next up, we have Josh with some bowls.
Hello. My name is Josh. Not been a member too terribly long, but I've had lots of little projects in each of the areas, so it's been a ton of fun. For the most part, I've been doing a lot of turning and going down that amazing realm of free wood on the side of the road means free turning. So I've been doing a lot of scavenging as well, too. Camera, no. This is a bit of spalted white ash. Has some beautiful spalting bits, which are just little fungi essentially going through. Has this weird leopard, unsure what that is, but it's gonna be spectacular. I've had to seal a bit of the cracks where some branches that come off through piths likely would continue to crack. But some super glue has done just fine. And I'm gonna try and save that little hole. It goes right through. Yep, can't catch it. But this was my first attempt at a rimmed bowl. I'm getting up and underneath. I'm in the process of, along with machining and the blacksmith area, to make a hollowing tool out of just some cheap stock, so that'll make these processes a little bit easier. I don't know where this is going. This may go along with this, another beautiful piece. My sister wanted a kind of a big flat bowl for her countertop. So this was the largest piece of wood I had at the time, so I thought it would be ideal. This was turned green, so it was turned basically fresh off the ground, right off the tree. Green wood turns really nicely, comes off in very big curls, and it's really wet, so sometimes you can get sprayed with sappy, watery goodness. I believe after this I had, there's a trash bin in the woodworking area that gets filled with sawdust and it gets composted. The week before I filled it in a day, and the day I turned this I filled it in a day as well. So quite a bit of chips came off of it, and some termites likely. We'll see if they survived, but they'll be happy in the mulch, I'm sure. Because it's green, you have to turn really, really thick. This will be much thicker, much thinner. And I am in the process of weighing it. So you weigh it periodically, and when the weight starts to reach an equilibrium, it's likely not losing any more water. So it's safe to turn a little drier and a little thinner. So I can pass these around because it is really spectacular grain. This was from a local park near my house in Inskip, and it was laying on the side of the road, likely developing that beautiful spalting. When wood stays on the ground for too terribly long and moisture and bacteria grow, you get that spalting material, but you can only let it wait for so long until it gets punky or really spongy and it explodes right off the lathe, which is not fun. This is a piece of, I guess this is a before. That was a in progress. This is a before. This is a piece of American beech, a smaller piece that was down the street in my neighborhood. It came off about 5 feet. So I kind of rockied it down the street back to my house to the chagrin of my wife as she passed me in our car. This will be a vase eventually, and I was actually going to turn it tonight. So I may have another show and share extremely soon on a success or fail on this. This I'm going to try and attempt to do a multi-axis turning. So one axis will stay the same, the other will be, this will all be between centers or 2 points. The first will be in dead center, exactly in the middle. The first point on this side will be in the center so I can round it and make a tenon, something to grab on. Then I'll divide it in 6 and space it out X amount of distance. This is all the seat of my pants. And it will be slightly off kilter in 6 different positions, essentially allowing me to facet it in 6 different planes, so to speak. I've never done one before. I was hoping Neil was going to be here tonight. But I will try my best. If not, I have lots more of this. So yeah, hopefully I have something more to show next week. Any questions? Yes?
How long will you have to wait before you can finish turning the?
That's a great question. I don't quite know. I had a big last batch of bowls that I turned a little thinner than this come through, and those were about 3 to 4 weeks till I could final turn them. One of them cracked while I was turning it, so I may have not waited long enough for that. Good couple weeks. I imagine I left these thicker, so maybe closer to 2 months. These are nice pieces, and I don't terribly want them to go wild. People put them in microwaves as well to accelerate the drying process, but I only have the one, and I don't think that's a great idea. So I'm going to take my time on these. These are probably about two months out. I turned them maybe 2 weeks ago at this point, so we're having some progress.
What type of finish will you put on?
These will, I don't believe they're going to be used in any food safe condition, so likely just use a hard wax oil. I've been playing around with the Brywax version of Osmo. It's a whole lot cheaper. It has a really beautiful touch. I like making things that you can touch and handle, and that just seemed to be one of the easier options. You don't have to put it on the lathe as well, too. You can just apply it by hand. Nice and simple. Yes?
Will this be the same process? You kind of rough cut it first and then let it dry and later finish?
Yes. The only difference here is with all the axes, mumbo jumbo, that's not really going to affect anything. I will try and hollow it out with a big Forstner bit in the tailstock, but that'll have to be closer to the end. That'll help drying quite a bit. It'll also take the pith out. The pith is the center that transports a lot of the moisture and things like that. That's usually where cracks start. But I've seen lots of vases. This is also my first vase. I'm just kind of really sending it because it's a great, big, powerful lathe. I've seen lots of vases turned through the pith, and if you remove enough of it, typically the bottom is stable enough. We're going to find out together, though. Any other questions? Wonderful. Thank you so much.
I don't know about you all, but I think we're really traveling. First, we start off with the future with cosplay, and then we come back to Earth with some woodwork. And now we're going to go back in time to a mid-century mess with Isaac.
I thought that y'all might like to see this goofy restoration project I'm working on a little bit. This is an artifact of the 1960s, maybe not early 1970s. Somebody's seen this thing before, right? This is a oil rain motion lamp. Basically, it's got a reservoir at the bottom that's got mineral oil in it, and there's a pump that moves the mineral oil up to the top, where it's allowed then to seep down on these monofilament lines to create sort of a rain effect. And it has a light bulb, so technically it is a lamp. These things would have been sold at Spencer's Gifts if that was a thing back then. I mean, they're super classy. We had been looking for one for a little while. If you can find one in decent shape nowadays, it'll cost you between $300 and $1,500, depending on how nice it is, how big it is, and how rare it is, which explains why I don't own one. But we found this one at a junk store in unknown condition for almost nothing. And so I figured, maybe I can fix it, you know. The thing about these is, as you can imagine, because it's moving all this mineral oil through the open air, it's collecting dust and dander and pollen and popcorn and whatever you've got floating around in your environment and distributing it evenly throughout all the mechanisms of the lamp and the nearby environment. So they're filthy things, and they basically just get dirty until you hate it and throw it away. And so my hope was I could just kind of clean it up and maybe it would work. And so I started by getting it into a warm soapy bath and scrubbing the heck out of it. This is a terrible picture. I apologize. I didn't get one while I was doing it because it was all very terrible. But where the oil comes out of the top, there's all these little sort of, they're almost like rivets or grommets. And so they're tiny cylinders that the monofilament passes through and the oil runs through. And so they tend to get all clogged up. And so the right thing to do is to take all the monofilament out and restring the lamp, which I was totally avoidant of because I'm mad lazy. And so I bought these tiny little scrub brushes that are meant for rejuvenating your shower head and used those to scrub it out real good and just kind of crossed my fingers. The next bit, of course, was the foliage. They always have all this plastic plant business, you know, and I couldn't clean it. It was so old, I mean, it was just crumbling in my hands. So I went to Michael's and I bought a garland of plant substitute that was roughly the right scale and color, you know, and just got little tufts of it off and was replacing then all the original vegetation. You can't see terribly well on the projector, but this white business here is a sheet of closed cell foam that I wrapped around the monofilament to create a spacer. And my hope was that as I glued in the vegetation, I was establishing that it was not going to lean against the monofilament and catch the oil, which would be terrible. That sort of worked. The other thing that was really crazy to me is this pump in the bottom. That's the thing you really want to work because it's hard to get one that will go in there easily and do the job. And so I was really hopeful that this one could be rejuvenated. The internet had prepared me. I looked at pictures of it, and the pumps that are in these things are usually these open frame, janky, timid little pumps. And this thing is a big hoss. This is a 1.1 horsepower pump. I have no idea why. As far as I can tell, it's original though. It's period appropriate and it's bracketed in there. And so I don't know why this one needed to be the turbo model, but that's what I got, the big block one. So I cleaned it up as best I could. You know, I replaced some O-rings. This little pipe here where the outlet of the pump comes out was completely toast, so I replaced that and ultimately just sort of crossed my fingers and reassembled it. I redid the wiring. And this was all happening this Sunday. And then, there we go. I had read on the internet people talking about, yeah, you got to plug it in, unplug it, add a little oil, go through this whole thing, and you're trying to get it to prime. Nah. Did I mention it has a 1.1 horsepower pump? It's like, zah, it starts moving right away. And so I was, pretty proud of myself. If you've seen one of these before, though, you may be thinking to yourself, seems like the oil's moving sort of fast. Like, isn't it supposed to have more of a drippy, rainy effect? Well, it turned out that my girlfriend had not bought the classy oil lamp oil. This is straight up mineral oil, which is not nearly as viscous. And I think that's why it's in turbo mode. So at any rate, obviously I recorded this video in anticipation of sharing this with you today so we can all celebrate my victory. This was right before the board meeting on Sunday. So I went into the board meeting. Remember the title of this was Mess. When I came out of the board meeting, there was an arc of mineral oil shooting out the side of the lamp and onto the floor. And as I approached it in horror, what I found was that the oil was coming out of this aperture where the bulb is, and it was following the curvature of the bulb, which gave it enough angle to come out the side. That sucked. I'm honest to goodness not entirely sure what's wrong. I'm hoping that it's simply a matter of the viscosity of the oil. We've ordered the classy stuff. It could also be that I put in too much oil. It could also be that the oil return is clogged and I failed to notice that. Or it could be that this pump is just outrageous. I don't know yet. But for now, it remains turned off and sad. We're going to get there.
Did you add an IoT device to it so you turn it on and off?
I did do that, yeah. I did that before I checked that it worked.
Okay. Are there any other shares that I didn't catch you before to sign up? Okay, well, we'll just go straight to announcements. None of those either, so this is going to be a pretty short one. We always appreciate volunteers here, and in the wood shop we have some jet filters, and I think it's been a couple weeks since those have been changed. So thank you. We'll get those changed up. If you see a trash can that's full, we have cleaning crew that come through, but sometimes they miss one. So just take it out to the trash can, please. And we have classes. So when I looked earlier, there was a spot in the welding class, but there isn't anymore. So sorry about that one. That's how popular and how quickly these classes can go. There is still a ticket left two tickets left for the Moonraker class on Saturday, and in the afternoon there's one ticket left for the crossbow. It's sold. Okay, from the time I looked at it,
No, it says it's available on the main page, but if you go and buy the tickets, it's sold. Somebody has something to do with that.
okay. So it says there's a ticket, but there's really not, is what Billy is saying. And then we have the ever popular new members onboarding next Thursday night. So if you're new here or you just want to learn more about us, or you just want to, meet the new people and hang out, that is next Thursday at 7 o'clock. So with that, I'll just turn you loose and let you go. Enjoy the shop, everybody.